Hi, my name is Gabe, and I'm here to share with you guys random Squid Games facts. Okay, so first and foremost, to get this started, hey, um, Squid Games challenge basically has been posted decently recently in terms of its content and everything for season two. And I love analysis videos. And ironically, I haven't found that much related to the show. And there's things that I see in other strategic reality TV, like Big Brother or Survivor mostly, which has these kinds of analysis, and I would have loved to see it for Squid Games Challenge. So yeah. Um, so essentially, like to start things off, that's the intro of what is this? Why am I doing this? Other questions that I just didn't think about and wanted to make 6 lines for, as you can see. But anyways, we'll just ignore that. So yeah, what is Squid Game first and foremost? So it is a Korean drama based around 456 people competing against each other to the death, where one person will earn 456 million Korean won. I don't know the conversions. I know it's not as big as it sounds, but still in the millions. So, like, which to be fair is a very interesting premise. I really like people think Hunger Games. I really like Battle Royale instead, in terms of the idea of, obviously, I don't want it in real life, but like, it's very interesting seeing so many people with so many different life stories where you don't know who's going to win. Hunger Games, for instance, there's an obvious main character, you know exactly what's going to go down, and then there's different parts to it. It's both the strategic side of fairness of the games and also the human side of the stories and how players' route goes. And that's essentially Squid Game's challenge, where they made it into a reality TV show. Questionable, but I would say I find it very entertaining. And we'll get through to different things. So, first and foremost, as a small nod, this won't take long. I had in mind if I would go through each and every game of season two, and this is primarily a season two video. In the end, I'm not. It's somewhat of a work in progress, but I have no idea if I'll actually finish through. But I really wanted to go ahead and explain to you the player side of things. So the players, there's different ways to go about it in terms of the representation. Remember, there's 456 players that you're dealing with, and we're going to go through some different categories, but essentially, how do we even get this information? So first and foremost, there is this site where you can end up seeing a player's profile, and you can scroll and see things. For instance, here's one. Their location is Canada, so we can get the country through that. Okay, this person is Kentucky, but we can go ahead and say, oh, the state of Kentucky is US, and the state of Denver is clearly another US state. I'm kidding. This is why the website is a bit messed up, because you find little things like that, and I'm like, oh my gosh, the amount of data pulling needed to do the simplest of tasks is very exhaustive, to be quite honest. But yeah, leaves me. That's how I was essentially. But I do have some analysis after doing all of that. So first and foremost, this is like a heat map of the US to specify the states. As you can see, California, Texas, Florida, then New York are the most represented, but that's obviously by count. If you grab the population instead, so obviously there's literally those are the top four, I think, population-wise, so it's not surprising seeing that many people from those states. If you were to grab 1,000 people and just batch them together and then pick one batch of that 1,000 and see if there's at least one person that is participating in Squid Games, these are the results instead. So by capita. So Alaska, you have if you're from Alaska, you should definitely apply. You have the best chance of making it through, apparently. Nevada's up there, Hawaii is up there, Mississippi is up there. The rest you can pause the video and see where your state is and whatever. But I'm international myself. In fact, I'm not part of the UK. I'm not part of the very mainstream countries. So obviously, I want a more worldly approach. Unsurprisingly, the US take the stand. For the UK, I'm including Wales, Northern Ireland, and Scotland for the sake of it. So that is the UK with 59, Canada's next at 13, and Australia at 6. Um, when you go ahead and do the per capita thing, just like I mentioned in the past, there's US once again, which is 0.33, 0.11. There's the UK, Ireland, and Canada. You can see the numbers, they dwindle down quite a bit. But we can see that the rest of the world, essentially, we could do a percentage. It's like 80% USA, 13-ish percent UK, and then 7% for the rest of the world. Fun fact, though, there has never been anyone from Malta, and it would be expected that after 3 seasons, that one person should be allowed to, should be expected. So maybe that should be a consideration, in my most humble opinion. But anyways, going to age next. So the way that the age was representative, you can see the bar graph right here. L means late, E means early. So the most biggest category was the late 20s, 24.1%. I'm not sure if I'm necessarily surprised. I think it makes sense though. The early 20s are lesser, and after that it's the early 30s and the late 30s and so forth. But yeah, this I didn't think much about. So obviously worth noting, the player profile doesn't actually give you the gender, so I am straight up assuming. I did go through some people's Instagram profiles if there is to see certain pronouns just in case, but essentially this is what I got. Now, it's not an even split. It's not 2 to 8, 2 to 8. So straight up, I could have definitely made a mistake along the way. I tried double checking, didn't find, or maybe, like the same way that there's Denver inside of what's it called, and as a location, maybe they did just put in 229 females and 227 males and call it a day. There's a small possibility, or like other filming issues, maybe a backup or whatever. But this is just the data I'm going by. So yeah, those are all the players that go through. Now I will say, each one of these players isn't obviously there are a number like this, but as much as I love the demographic representation of it, of what are the chances of finding someone who wins or whatever, like I said earlier on, I really, really love the life story, the life cycle, the story behind the person, the human side, what they go through, and essentially that's all in the edits of whatever they show. So I wanted to make a special edit for one random person that I am not invested in at all until I made this video. I will say I really love old people, and straight up, I just happened to choose the oldest guy in the room, and perfect for me. He was standing right there in the middle, or just perfect there, number 142. So this Frederick, his job is accounting faculty and career coach, which, let's go, Fred. There were so many different occupations in the player profiles, like 10 people, which also was a bit of a mess. Like, I'll get to it in a bit, but let me just finish Fred's profile. So he's 77. He is the oldest, and by a good chunk, like 5-ish years over the next person. He's from Georgia, which is the USA. He loves ballroom dancing and weightlifting. And spoilers, he probably goes out in pentathlon. And I'll explain that in a bit. So yeah, from here, I did mention the occupations. I'll make a random shout out that how tough it was to go through. I was considering doing occupation representation, but there would be something like 10 people that are retired, one person that's a retired military officer, blah, blah, blah. Or there would be 4 registered nurses, 3 nurses, 1 nurse practitioner, so on and so forth. Or the double jobs where it's like a waitress and marketing agent, server, and then there would be a server and I don't know, casino play gambler, I don't know, something where it's like so many random occupations, and it's like, yeah, it was just tough properly make a to properly consider, so I just skipped. So, anyways, this is back to player 142, and these are all the times that we see him, ish. And I just wanted to create the story of what we can get out of him seeing him here. So he is in the counter game, obviously. He is part of the X's, which is very, very good. We see him like we can see on the left side, alongside 98, Matthew. He goes ahead and does the X. He's really into the crowd. I love him for it. And as you can see as well on the right, when they're waiting for the results, everyone else seems to be very distraught. Like they're hoping for the best, but like you can see they're like exasperated. Meanwhile, we have Fred over here. He's just having the time of his life. He's so happy, so thrilled. I'm very confident. I'm confident he was confident. Like you can see it, and I love him so much for it. So what we know, first and foremost, from the first video, that we'll never see him wear this jacket ever. Like in the opening scene, and that's it. So he despises zippers or feels the heat, and he's willing to go against the crowd and is an initiative king, aka, in my opinion, I think he started the X thing. That's right. And yeah. So from here, this is the next scene we see of him. The twin returns, which is 431 from the O side, and we see a flood of people go up to him. And Fred walks up to them, sees the crowd and everything, but he's not in the center. We'll find this out a bit later on, but essentially, as in, like, for here, I just made a note that he is not as close to the twins, which isn't too far beyond. Essentially, I will say that he doesn't seem to be the biggest crowd person, and we'll get to it. Next, we find the twin tusks. So we see him right over here. He's talking to this guy right here. I can't tell who he is. There's also this guy that is seemingly like talking over here. So we see him with like a group of 3 people, which is good. There's other people that are up here, either taking a break or something, but essentially one thing's for sure, he's a socializer, not a sleeper, which is a good thing. From here, the only other time, the random time, once the twins have the task to choose who they want to eliminate, we see him talking to this guy. Nothing much to it, and I can't even tell who that guy is. I tried, but to no avail. But just that he is continuing to socialize, which is good. We see him once again socializing with, I'm fairly certain this is a woman. I again can't tell who it is. It's just out of the question. And here the twins are starting to walk up to eliminate someone. From here, once again, we see the twins have already done their good luck thing and whatever, and the results are about to come up. They don't know this yet. And we see him talking to one guy, which is player 125, which is actually kind of cool. I don't think most people know this, but if you go back in the episodes, Dimitri, player 125, was the guy that immediately called out Ryan 272 about the bullying thing of Mark and the catch game, and it's like, we can't do this. So it's nice to see, like, hey, like Dimitri is like talking to the oldest guy in the room. I didn't think he wouldn't, but it's like, oh, that's cool when you see someone you somewhat know about. Like, oh, he's interacting with a character. I can't even say Dimitri was a main character, but still. Anyways, so we know now that Fred interacts in groups of 2s and 3s. He's always been like this the entire time we see him. It's never a huge crowd. But anyways, finally, this is one of the last scenes we see him, is when the money, when the piggy bank goes down. So essentially, we got ourselves the best version of him, which is our Spinny King. So in conclusion, Fred, no jacket can own him. Goes against the crowd, a revolutionary and a trendsetter in my opinion. Doesn't believe in cloning, a social soldier, quality over quantity, and our Spinny King. R.I.P. Fred. He's still alive. He's just amazing. Well, I think he's alive. But we'd never see him in Pentathlon, even though clearly he should be there. They only showed 74 people, and there was like 122, so he just wasn't shown in the edit. But we do know that he wasn't in the bottom five, and he doesn't make it in catch because he's not seen here. So unfortunately, that's the end of the road for Fred. But yeah. So after all that said, Fred, why is this story important? One, it's nice to see and everything. But secondly, this is what the edit could have shown us, could have went ahead and shown us all this information in a way. I could totally be wrong about Fred. He could have been slacking, he could have not been talking, and I happen to see this. Like, this is what I inferred from the little moments we saw of him, which is very obvious. Like, the camera wasn't on him. He happened to be where the camera was, if it makes sense. So yeah, this is where we try and decipher what the show is trying to tell us, what insight it wants us to know, and that's where confessionals come in. Now, what is a confessional? Confessional essentially is where we are told the player's thoughts. Now, I'm counting this as simple as audio, where you don't see the player's mouth moving, but you hear their thoughts. The visual, where you can see them like paused in the room, where and it's like, okay, what's going on, and they're explaining to you. Which usually the visual is them telling the audience, or maybe their thoughts as well. Audio sometimes is more thinking out loud to themselves, in inverted commas. And finally is the backstory. In season one, they called this the player processing rooms. I think it's very long-winded, but I think a backstory is better. Yeah, needless to say, my favorite backstory was Trinity's orange juice story, but that's just me. No, I'm kidding. But I do love, generally, all three of these are very important to me in the show. So, okay. So that was a small video just showing the people who were most shown. And when I say shown, I just mean by confessionals that I had mentioned over time. So I'm going to go through some charts really quick soon. And essentially, it's important to know that the gray ones are dormant, that they're still alive, but they haven't been shown to us yet. Active means they've had at least one confessional in the past. And then the death episode is in purplish pink. To being this is their final episode and they end up dying. Inactive just means they're dead and we'll never see them again. I thought so. And anyways, there's an exception to it. If they have the most confessionals, I did make a little marker to it to commemorate them having that much. Like they clearly were, I won't say the MVP, but like clearly the show wanted us to know them a lot. So I'm starting from the bottom to the top, but here's a good example of people. For instance, here's Emily, which I'm not going to say we never see her, but it's a good example that we never hear from her until the very end in Snakes and Ladders, Slides and Ladders, whatever it's called. Whereas some other people, let's say Melissa, we hear her with the Eric story, with her reacting to Eric's story, with her essentially mostly with her relationship to Eric, to be quite honest. But we see her peppered around, and then we also see her insights at the very end in her final game. Here's another example, Kate. So we see her the very last two episodes, but in reality, we've seen her before. She was a hall monitor here in episode 6, but we never hear her insights. We never hear her thoughts. So that just is 0 in this chart. It's worth noting it just because this doesn't mean that there's someone that is completely invisible, but the more confessionals you have, the more visible you are. And it's not like we've seen Kate properly before this, aside from maybe the first episode as she's getting in the car, and other people like that. You can see I denoted their country, their Gender, their player number. There should be there doesn't need to be age, but anyways, we'll get through those later. Um, and finally, we have our top people. These are people that made it all the way to the end. For instance, Perla having all nine um, episodes, so she gets an episode run of nine. Episode run worth noting is from when you start until you finish. So Trinity also has nine episodes run, despite second and third episode he wasn't shown as a confessional, but we just know he's alive. It's in the back of our heads. So yeah, the final five, the finalists were denoted with a lighter pink just for the sake of it. But you can pause and see for yourself or check out Reddit posts or whatever, because I know it's floating around there. Um, Next up is kind of like exploring more the demographics. So here's one related to the gender. So we can see like episode by episode how it goes. Now, mind you, I think, and this is an aggregate total, and this one is how many unique people are shown. So, for instance, the first episode, I think this is five females are shown and eight males, and you just keep on going through. Now, in the end, there were 17 females shown and 24 males, or roughly for every two female confessionals, there were three male confessionals, as a heads up. That being said, for each person that we got to know, so obviously, I'm not gonna lie, that is over time quite a disparity. But that being said, for every player we got to know, I do feel like we got to know them roughly the same way. There's about half a confessional less if you're a female versus a male. To me, like, I know bias, whatever, but like I think those numbers are fairly close. But yeah, this one, there's definitely a bias. I hadn't noticed myself, but there were Redditors that made and Facebook people that made these comments and Twitter or X. So yeah, but seeing the numbers, I'm like, yeah, clearly that's the case. And worth noting, in the end, it was very heavily female finals. Like Circle of Trust, we'll find out that there were 7 out of 10 players were female, and it's like, oh, okay, like you have to have more female content in the end. So it does make it look a bit worse, but yeah. But if it helps, this is like the worst one, I feel like, until we move over forward. Next one is countries. So obviously, I'm very, I'm international, so my country wasn't represented here, but I'm very into this as well. We can see that there were 300. We can see the number of confessionals that were in every country. We can see the breakdown. There were 35 US people and 6 non-US. And we can also see confessional capita, which again, there's nothing too special about this in terms of like worth noting. I think at the best, I think I do make a stat later on about this when it comes to comparison, so I will wait up till there. But if you want to pause and see where the storyline goes, the Australians and Jonty, for instance, is one of them. You can see a rise and a fall. Kate comes in the back end, whereas the twins come at the front end, and that kind of explains it more. And obviously, Vanessa is the Canadian candidate. The only other person I never mentioned is 455, who has a one random confessional with the bottom 5 voters. But yeah. So here it is. This is the expected count of how many people you'd expect to be shown by the US. There were slightly more than expected, so it gets a green, whereas we expected at least 5 people from the UK to be shown, and only 3 were shown, which I know it's only 2, but in the end, that's like a 40% reduction when you think about it. So yeah, Canada, equal. Australia is great. You could say you would have expected one more person from the rest of the world, but in another argument, you could say maybe that Australian was the rest of the world. So yeah. Moving on, next one we have the age ranges, which unsurprised, like I'll explain soon, but like it's a similar way where you count up how many people were around and how many you expected. So in most cases, let's say because there were so few older people, seniors, they didn't get as much content. In fact, barely any. And you would have expected, this is the expected confessional count, and this is the confessional total count, whatever. And this is the expected people we'd see. So we expected to see one person in their late 60s, and we didn't. But similarly, we expected 8 people ish to be in their early 20s. Instead, we got 16. So obviously, there were a lot more people in their early 20s shown. But what is possibly the reason? As in, I don't know this for a fact, I'm just guessing here, but I think it's kind of shows that early 20s people are more likely to make these random risks, um, get shown more time. Maybe they seek it because influences, you want to be influencers or whatever. I just randomly putting it out there that that's a possibility. And yeah, in fact, they had 134 out of 350 confessionals, which is like more than double, or let's say double what was expected. It really is pretty much exactly double. The other category that went upwards was actually what's it called, late 30s. This was honestly kind of surprising for me, but hey, like it's nice to see either way. But because these two pulled up so much, everything else went down. Like I don't even think the the late 20s were that bad with 76, but in the end it was actually lower than what it was supposed to be because of this. And by the way, like all things considered, I'm someone in my late 20s. Like I'm very much for seeing this number of confessionals. I'd like to see more in the older crowds if it were me, but yeah. Uh, if you wanted a random fun fact, the oldest player that was shown to us was Michael the musician, number 89. But anyways, um, so that shows the confessionals reached out to and everything. So next is like a comparison between season 1 and season 2, some random facts. So the highest placing person, which we never got a confession from season 1 was 13th place in James, player 269. He ends up being the last player to jump in glass bridge and goes down and essentially is eliminated from the game like that. Next is Justin, and I don't know where to place him. To me, he would be 12th place, and I'll explain why. But essentially, he didn't make the top 10. There were 3 people that didn't make it through the slides and ladders. So that's 3 people in 11th place. So, in my opinion, that's 3 people in 11th, 3 people in 12th, 3 people in 13th. So if it were up to me, the average would be 12th, but I left it into 11th because I think most people would go by that. Next is longest episode run. So worth noting, like season 1 actually had 10 episodes, so they should be better, inverted commas, but have a better shot of getting this. But it was Trey, player 301, who made it to 8 episodes from episode 1 all the way to 8. I think he gets eliminated at the very start of episode 8, but I could be wrong. For season 2, there were actually 2 people that had 9 episodes under their belts. There was Perla and there was Trinity. Now, I had already mentioned Trinity had 2 episodes that weren't shown to us. I think Perla had 1. Definitely Trinity had less than Perla though. Then we move on where we have the number of players showcased. How many different people did we see their confessionals? In season 1, there were 53 players that were shown, and in season 2, there were 41. And I will say, like, straight up, I thought Perla was going to get eliminated well before. She reminded me of Jada, number 97, where we got information out of her. And I didn't understand why, inverted commas, because we didn't see much of a relationship she had with other people, in my opinion. And it's like, okay, we're getting these thoughts. Is she the winner? Because we're getting shown her. But no, she dies. She gets eliminated. Not instantly. She lasts a while, but she does go out. So similarly, season 1, I felt like there were more players that were geared up to be shown how they'll end up getting eliminated. Whereas season 2, we get more spots about these people will make the finals, like final 10, what happens then. But yeah, finally, this is one last comparison of the how the breakdown was of the finals from Circle of Trust. So worth noting, season one had 10 players, whereas season two had nine. You can see, honestly, it's not too bad, but like season two, the one good thing about it was uh, a late 40s person made it to the end. Um, and the rest is pretty fine. Like, yes, someone make it made it in their early 30s, in their early 20s extra, and one person less made it from the early 30s. But the breakdown is very, very similar to what you would expect. I mentioned, like, yes, you would have expect you should fairly expect one more player to make it in their 50s, roughly. But in my opinion, it's really not that bad in terms of it kind of shows the games this time around was more fair for any abled body. Again, my opinion, from what I'm seeing from the stats, without thinking too much about it. Um, so yeah, then we have the season one count, which again, like it's not compared. It should not be compared to the expected count, more so to the season two count to see that roughly it really was the same. In fact, like it's Mai here in her early 50s. Sorry, Mai, which basically it it is the trade off for two people in their late 40s, which isn't too bad. The average age, in fact, is 32.4 from the finalists, whereas season one, the average age was 31.7. I was surprised, to be quite honest. Not that Mai is that old or something, more so because there are a lot of players 30 and above. Like, remember, if you're exactly 30, you still make it in the second category. So I thought this would be have more. But here worth noting, like from season two specifically, the average age was 36.6, it's 36.3. So it does dip down, but it's not, in my opinion, it's not that bad. Um, Next, we have the countries, which starting off from season two, we have 8 Americans, one person from Britain, which is obviously Kate, and next Canadian and Vanessa. All things considered, this came out bang on great in the sense of what you would expect it was. Like, and you might say, oh, like Canada was overly represented. But if you just grabbed Canada, Australia, and the rest of the world, you would expect one candidate out of it. So the fact that you combined all of that and got an 811, perfection. Season one, I really doubt I'd ever do this to get the exact expected count, so I just went ahead and did this to compare. There were 7 Americans and 2 people from Britain. Once again, 9 people made the finale, and that's about it. Um, and then there's gender count. This should be season one count, but there it was a typo I didn't realize. But yeah, what I had said this in the past. There were 7 female players this time around versus 3. Now we didn't get to see this, but it's somewhat surprising that this season is more lopsided. Probably there's some things that were not shown, and I mentioned that because in the in season one there was the something of allegiance, test of allegiance, where it's like a safety chain. You are safe and you pick the next person to be safe with you. And I believe there were a lot of females that were chosen in a row. I don't know the exact count, but they ended up decently equal. So yeah, that's a bit surprising that this is more equal compared to the other one. It was lopsided. Maybe I'm probably misremembering, and this was actually more lopsided before the test of allegiance. But yeah, so what's next? That's about it. Worth noting that essentially don't know what to do next, but if there happened to be any producer that wanted to reach out, feel free. Jokes aside, though, like if someone happened to also be interested in computer vision and somehow has like contacts in what's it called universities or whatever, this is something that it's not shown in here, but clearly I have the interest to grab the data and analyze or whatever. Like, I'm not really putting this out there. I don't think anything's going to happen, but might as well plug that in. And finally, in conclusion, thank you. If you guys have any questions, I would love to hear more in terms of, feel free in the comment section or whatever. But essentially, that is roughly about it. Um, um, or reach out if you know me or whatever, if you have any interest in the statistics or whatever. I will say the data was very hard to extract. So it's I doubt I'll be able to make such better things. But if you wanted to discuss something related to the categories and data that already exists, I'll be down. Thank you for listening in and tuning in. That is a long time to look into wherever the clock is. But yeah, thank you once again, and I'm going to end the stream here and see you. Bye.